Alright, we're back. Sorry if this is going to be a bit of an abrupt jump cut if I end up making this one video, or if it's two videos, it won't be as bad. But when I minimized the recording application, when I minimized the clips I was commenting over, the recording automatically ended. Thankfully, it actually saved the audio and the actual footage, unlike one time where it deleted like 3 hours of footage because I don't know. But I ended up wasting about 10 minutes of narration, so that's unfortunate, but we'll just have to work through it. Anyways, first 3 screenshots are from prior to the event. I just wanted to share them anyways. We're gonna try to be concise, but considering the last bit of footage was 23 minutes long, I do not have faith, but we will try. So this was from one of the tests prior to the actual event 2 starting, or trial 2 starting. But these were some nice fellas that I found. He had a very bizarre looking skin, but I'm told it's meant to be a JoJo skin, like from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Also, why are his eyes like... He's really focusing on fishing, good lord. No, but this was just a little sky base us 3 were making. This is another just chaos from that test. And then this is the first official screenshot from the entire event. Oh, I gotta narrate all this again, bro. I did so good the first time. Actually, no, I didn't. I said like every 10 seconds. Too bad I'm too lazy to edit that out. But anyways... Shit. I almost said again. Anyways, this is, I think, the second session on day 1. For Trial 2, this is all of the people that would end up becoming 7 boats, except for 170. I never saw that bloke again, I don't think, or at least he changed his skin. But the first session that we were together, it was just honestly survival, but I decided I would coalesce into a group, and they ended up just kind of following me, and I just pretended to be their leader, and in their only act of overriding my will, they decided to leave. They're usually very keen on listening to me, and I'm usually a very good leader that makes good calls, but this one time I insisted on staying in the desert because I liked the challenge. No one else shared my enthusiasm for starving to death and getting spawn camped by creepers. Hindsight, it makes a damn good bit of sense, but at the time I was really butthurt about it, but they outvoted me, so I just went along and just pretended like it never happened, and, But anyways, this is actually where we get the name 7 boats from, because if you can see here, 7 boats were used to migrate. 7 boats are very integral to the culture of our nation. It's, our migrating. It's a testament to how far we've come from this sad little shack. And, great symbol of camaraderie and nationhood for our people. It's quite nice. But we built this nice little handy dandy platform so we could all leave at the same time, and leave we do. Here's our base. We left in such a hurry, or rather we were so tired of this place, we didn't even harvest all our sugar. We just wanted to get out of here, although we did bring some, thankfully. Over here was the sky base of Egypt. They had left earlier, but we for some reason decided not to join them, but as we will see soon enough, our fates were evidently intertwined. This was also where we saw Seaman for the first time in one of their few instances of a non-violent altercation, which was nice, I guess. We didn't know that was nice at the time, but considering how annoying Seaman of Axes became, seeing them in any non-violent capacity was, kind of crazy. But anyways, this was the river where our first encounter was. It wasn't here, or it wasn't at this time, but it happened a few days prior as well. And they had just sailed by, a little squad of them, and they were like, "Hey, we're part of Seaman of Axes, come join us." And we just said, no thank you, and they sailed off. But for a while, we got confused with being part of Seaman of Axes. And I think this partially had to do with the fact that we didn't have a team name for the longest time. We just couldn't decide on anything, 3 people can hardly decide on a name. Try to get 14 people to decide, although now I'm kind of curious. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. You know what I mean. um, so, Seven Boats was actually a placeholder name. I think it was my idea, maybe? I remember being like, hey, we need a team name, and we were discussing it, and then it was either me, but maybe someone else was like, let's just do Seven Boats as a placeholder. And we were like, that's a good idea, but we became very attached to the name, and you know what they say about temporary solutions. So, this is the screenshot on top of the skybase that we built when we made it to the savannah. Right across the river there is Egypt, and we didn't know that it was the same Egypt from earlier. Apparently, they called themselves Egypt when they were here, and then when they built there, they were Egypt 2, and so people started calling them Egypt, which is quite funny. But when we got here, we didn't mean to settle right next to them, but we were so exhausted. Well, I can't remember the specifics. I think what it was is we got there and we didn't notice there was another tribe. But I think it also had to do with we were so exhausted with living in such an inhospitable desert. We were like, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, dealing with another tribe. But for a time, we were terrified of them. Partially my fault because I'm very wary of big groups like that. I don't think anyone else was thinking but so much about having a neighbor, but I was like, no, that's probably a Zerg over there, one of those big clans that just bullies other people and just kills and is full of anarchy. Um, oh, the irony of that in hindsight, but I didn't know that at the time, and for my previous, I think it's 3 years at least, 3 or 5 years of playing Civ events and watching Civ events and talking about them, a group as big and as loud as Egypt is very rarely cohesive and almost always violent. But thankfully, they proved to be uh, nothing that I expected. But we didn't know that at the time. So, in this screenshot, we're obviously trying to survive, but we're also trying to prepare for war. I remember being like, hey, we need to get like stone tools and leather armor at the bare minimum so we can defend ourselves. Not that any of us were really good warriors, except, some of these fine fellas, and I think one or two others. But anyways, fuck. Sorry. But anyways, this was us, and this is when we ended up. This is the first sighting of Seven Boats as a name, but we had come up with it like the night before, I think. And it was meant to be a bit of a name to rally us behind. And at this point, I think Seven Boats, I would say, was officially born. So, another screenshot of the base, that absolute abomination. Right here is where the mine shaft was. That place is a den of monsters. That thing, like, the monsters kept pathfinding to kill the miners, and then they kept pathfinding into the mine shaft, and so they would just dig out of the hole and then gun it straight for the base, which is why we have these handy-dandy trapdoors here and somewhere up here. But we did have one time where somebody left these open because we had built a wall and we thought the mine was safe. A creeper got out of here, hauled ass up the staircase, and blew up in this central room, and and I do mean all of our double chests were destroyed and landed in the water. It was a damn nightmare. But in hindsight, it was pretty funny. This wall here was a sad attempt at protecting against mobs while still growing sugarcane. I didn't know this at the time, but cobblestone did not stop mobs. They'll just dig right through it. I didn't know this. I'm the one who commissioned the wall, so that is my bad. And then there's a notice board here, and somebody got bamboo at some point. I never really did do much with it, but it was there. This was, I believe, the next day. And this is the leader of Egypt. I just call him the Pharaoh or Pharaoh because he never really had a name. He was always player 17 to everybody, but I don't like the number name. So to me, he's Pharaoh. This was his first official visit because prior to him logging on, me and my second in command, Trickster, had sailed over there in a boat and tried to talk to them, be like, what are your intentions? What are you working on? Are you peaceful? Who's your leader? And they told us that their leader wasn't online yet, but they'd be more than happy to be peaceful and friendly and lovey-dovey and all that. And we were skeptical until this bad boy showed up, and he was just an absolute cinnamon roll and convinced us that we had no need to fret, which was so nice to not have a neighbor. I mean, even now you can already see how close of a neighbor they are. Imagine having an enemy that close. So thankfully, they have a very good leader. Let's see here. I had something else, but I forgot. Oh, that's right, my second in command. I didn't introduce him. This is my second in command. He calls himself Trickster. I don't really know what his skin's supposed to be. He's got like these big goggles. He kind of reminds me of like a weird version of the guy from Dig Dug. But he was my second in command. I don't remember how he came into power. I think he just asked, and I was not going to be rude to him and tell him no, so he ended up following me around. And I don't mean to be rude when I say this, and Trickster, if you're watching this video for some reason, I do not mean this to be rude in the slightest. This was entirely my fault, and you shouldn't feel bad, but I didn't want you to be my second in command. You had, I mean, unfortunately, it was your mic was the issue. But I didn't have a nice way of telling you to be quiet. You know, you can't just politely tell someone to shut up, so I just didn't say anything. And that caused a lot of undue stress between the two of us, because I would just kind of ignore him. And I am sorry about that, and that's completely my fault for not being honest with him. But anyways, he was my second in command. I was in charge because from the moment I realized this event was happening, before I ever applied or logged on to the actual server or anything, I knew I wanted to lead a nation. And I wanted to recreate an old nation, you know, light an old flame that I had created years ago, back in 2020, called the Urbis Imperium, which is another faction I created, grassroots style. Like, I created a Discord, and I had one other guy in there, and from there we ended up becoming a group of about 30 people by the end of it. It was quite fun. And I left that Discord at one point and left it to my second in command, Alex, to run it. And he ended up running it for at least another 2 years by himself, where he would do other events with Urbis Imperium, which was quite cool. And I was hoping to light that old flame, and I was like, hey, maybe we should call this place something random, like Urbis Imperium. And they were just like, no. So we settled with 7 boats instead. Which, you know, that's fine. I'm over it. I like 7 boats better now that it has like a story behind it. This is a little bit later. You can see the makings of a wall here. Some a little more blast proof, something a little more mob proof. The sky base becomes an absolute conglomerate. I think this is someone's house. This is the medic's office. This is a turret. Various storage. A farm. I think there's furnaces at the top layer, so that you can get attacked by phantoms while you're at it. Gosh, the phantoms were so annoying, but you know, it was home. And these boats also lagged us a lot, so I had to break them. This is Egypt. I think on the same day, there was a bit of a wealth disparity. Obviously, you can see Pharaoh here. This is me. Not exactly in my Sunday best, but we were always behind them. We weren't nearly as grindy as they were. I think Pharaoh might have done a much better job at focusing the energy of his miners and armor smiths, so he was able to get full diamond armor, but I never went past iron. But I also wasn't there to, like, conquer the world. I was there to build a nation and a town, so I didn't really care as much, but also I couldn't help but feel naked and broke compared to this absolute god of a king. But yeah, the other funny thing is they also felt the need to, instead of phasing out the sky base, they just kept living out of it, which was probably smarter, and they replaced all of the blocks. And I think you could see it in earlier screenshots, but it's no, I guess you can't. But in earlier iterations of the base, all of this is dirt, and instead of removing the sky base and just building on the ground, they just replaced the dirt. So, I mean, to each their own, I guess. This is the original Seaman base that was destroyed during the first Seaman Pirate War. This one, at the time, was very confusing, but I think I've collected my thoughts a lot better since then. So, but here's a little background context. The only thing I knew at the time was Seaman was a group that we had at least heard of and seen before, and I would say about 5 of them had visited Seven Boats earlier, like a session or two prior, and they were claiming that they were merchants and friendly, and they were going to talk and be all hunky dory. And their leader claimed that he wanted to be best friends, and just ride off into the sunset with rainbows and unicorns. But that guy is a shit-faced liar. I don't care what he tells you. He is a bitch-ass motherfucker who was a chronic liar with a silver tongue, and he would stop at absolutely nothing to get what he wants. Not subterfuge, chaos, murder, anarchy. He was an absolute despot, and I'm so happy that he got his faction's teeth kicked in, which is what this is. Unsurprisingly, pirates being pirates, these guys who were we know now as Seamen of Axis, because there was 2 seamen groups, one on World 2, which is us, and then one on World 1, because obviously when you have people as creatively bankrupt as these guys, you're going to have duplicates of such a uninspired and crass name. But anyways, these guys were stealing sugarcane from everybody. They probably stole sugarcane from us. I remember there being complaints, but we didn't know who did it, so we didn't do anything at the time. But Tujip pretty quickly caught on. It was these guys, the Seaman Pirates. And so they rallied the troops together, prepared for battle, and somehow one of the Seaman people figured out, like, uncovered the plot. I think he was undercover. In the Tujib sky base, and so when he heard them like amassing their army, he was like, "Oh shit!" And so he went back here, tried to get them to mobilize, but they fell behind. Egypt got their army kitted out before they did, and they obviously outnumbered them way, like 2 to 1, 3 to 1, even population wise. And they also recruited some people from Seven Boats, because we were like, hey, we like Egypt, we trust them. And so I was unfortunately late because I took a wrong turn, and by the time I got there, I was only 5 minutes late, but the entire base had been ransacked for all it's worth. And this is their base. They had killed quite literally everyone they could get their hands on, broke all of their beds, and stole a ton of stuff. And then they went home, with victory on their lips. I was a little sad that I missed it, but at least they got the pirates, or so we thought at the time. I decided I'd end up just going in there just to document the place. This was their barracks. Presumably they would have had their beds up and down here, like bunk beds. But I don't know personally. This was all like after the fact. Over here is some kind of throne chair. Unfortunately, the text is blurred, so I don't know who the faction leader was. This was the main hall area. And right here is all that's left of some poor sod that died defending his home. And for some reason, they left, you can't see it here, but they left behind 24 stacks of charcoal and coal. So I ended up taking all of it, because why not? And I sailed all the way back home, and we used it to fuel 7 boats for, like, the rest of the event. It was great. Over here, we have a random screenshot of my first visit to Sylvia. Right here is Dora. Dora ended up getting banned because I don't even remember. But prior to that, he was a good friend of mine on the server, and we were traveling around the world being like, "Oh, we're gonna create the League of Nations. We're gonna call it the Association of Nations. It's gonna be like the UN." This stream was ultimately dashed, but it was fun while it lasted. But he helped me a lot with planning out where the headquarters should be, building out infrastructure, talking to people. He was also not officially a resident of 7 Boats, but he did have a house. This is us talking to the farmers in Sylvia. If you don't know, Sylvia is filled to the brim with a bunch of hard asses. They were so stingy and so skeptical about everyone, and I think it's entirely their leader's fault. It was honestly hilarious, but so frustrating. You couldn't get that guy to sign a treaty that says he loves puppies because he's like, what about? He was so skeptical to commit himself to anything, and it rubbed off on the entire team. So this was actually after a failed diplomatic mission. We were just talking to some of the farmers before we kept going up the river. I mean, failed's a strong word, but he basically just politely said, "I'll think about it," which is, a nice way of saying no. So there's that at least. This is my healer on top of a bamboo stalk. I saw in chat he said, "Hey, Pigus," or he didn't know my name, but I'm just gonna say that anyways. He was like, "Hey, Pigus, you need to come here and see this." And I was like, "Well, what is it now?" I saw a guy floating in the air, and I was like, "Oh, great, it's that jester guy again trolling my citizens." But no, instead it was my medic, who, by the way, had only just gotten to healer level 2, to where he could actually heal other people. This poor bugger died probably 7 times prior to this, so getting him to actually become a functioning healer was a damn nightmare. So imagine my horror coming up here thinking it was an admin and it's my healer on a single stalk of bamboo. Right here is a town meeting. You can tell how close Dora was prior to him getting banned off of the Discord and off of the event, because even though he's not a citizen, he still participated in the meeting. This was a government reorganization I did, because initially I was in charge of literally everything. Unsurprisingly, this was a terrible system that gave me gray hairs, so I ended up being like, hey, I'm going to have a guy in charge of each job. You will answer to him, and they will answer to me. And that ended up being a lot better for my mental health, because my workload only got worse. I couldn't imagine doing all this on top of diplomacy stuff. This is a delegation from, I forget the name, and I feel so bad. The map calls it Traveler's Island, but they didn't like the name. But unfortunately, that's the name on the map, so that's all I remember. But these people would stop by every now and again. They were very nice. This is Egypt again. When I was visiting, we visited each other constantly, and they're always such lovely people, always so giving and kind, and they were more than willing and happy to share anything they were developing. There was one time where we even talked about merging the nations, but the other citizens of Seven Boats ultimately didn't want that, and to be fair, neither did I. So we did stay separate, but we were as close as you could get to being one nation without actually being one nation. It was great. So this is, I think it's just meant to be a generic statue. I don't know where the timetables are at for this event. Actually, I think we're coming up on what I want to talk about. You can already tell here the farms are getting closer. For some reason, both of the farmers felt the need to expand their fields as close to each other as possible. This is, I believe, a secondary visit to Sylvia. This is Sylvia's leader. He had a different name. I think they called him like the Marshal of Sylvia or the Commander-in-Chief of Sylvia, but I misheard it the first time and called him Commandant, like the German officer. But I ended up keeping that, one, because I couldn't remember his actual name to save his life, and two, I feel like Commandant was a lot more fitting of a name because he ran his shit like it was the Navy. I mean, he's dressed the part too. You can't see it, but he's wearing like military duds with like badges and stripes and decals and all that fun stuff. So this was another meeting, and again, Dora here being front and center with a meeting that could decide my nation's future. He was very active before he got banned. This is one of my warriors, and then this is Dog. I believe, actually, no, this isn't that time. Oh, yeah, no, I know what this is. We decided we were going to go to every single nation that was known of, and we were going to talk to every nation we could find, because we noticed that everybody had built on this like one river, and we were going to visit everybody and be like, hey, what do you think about joining the Association of Nations? It'll be like a public forum to voice your nation's interests. And the results were mixed, honestly. I think Egypt was the most vocal, but the further out we got, the less supportive they usually got. And we ended up missing like 3 nations because they were just so far upriver we had to turn around. And we never got around to actually finishing the trip. But this guy was a hard no, I think. These guys were like a maybe, I think. They didn't have a leader, so they couldn't make a definitive decision. They ran off a council system. I'm trying to remember what nation this is. Is this IRS? I think it is. They had a cool sky base, though. It was really sprawling. And you wouldn't know this is a sky base, because there's like whole buildings and roads and farms, but we are in the sky right now. This is a general screenshot with all of their guild leaders. I think they did have one or two guys fill in as the representative of their job, since their actual guys were offline, but I was like, hey, I want one of everybody, so. This was a fucking story-relevant NPC, because we couldn't fucking find one of the tribes on the map, and we just searched high and low, and then we just saw this guy bobbing in the water because he didn't have enough hunger to swim, and he was like, oh, hi, yes, I'm from so-and-so nation, oh, what's that? You want to visit them? Oh, yeah, like, thank you for feeding me. I'll absolutely take you strangers to my small tribe. So, thank the Lord in heaven above he was there, because we had no idea how inland they were from the river. I'm blanking on their name, unfortunately, but they were at most 6 people. It was a nice little group, though. We talked to them for a little bit. They were very isolationist and even a bit standoffish, but they were cool people. And then here's another nice thing. These 3 people knew each other from one of the experiments, or one of the test runs of this server prior to it actually being Trial 2. And they had obviously been separated because there's no way to guarantee that you're even in the same world, let alone the same location. But I took Dog along. This is Dog. And he met up with his 2 friends, and it was really sweet. And so I got a group screening with him. This is more traveling. This is a screenshot of the base. This is our mine shaft. This guy was showing me our mob spawner that he found, and he made sure to keep a tight lip on that. So that was very nice of him. Too bad that mob spawner ended up breaking and the mods wouldn't replace it. This is another visit of Egypt. Lightning struck right by me. I think that's a compass they built, so that was cool. Okay, I remember this. This is me and the master builder, as I called him, because he was the chief of the builders role, and so I ended up calling him Master Builder. I think I originally tried to call him Purple Guy, and at the end he was almost called Emmett because Emmett was the Master Builder of the Lego Movie. You know. Anyways, we thought my brother was on the same server, and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna log on and see if I can meet up with you." So we traveled back to spawn, and we came across our old sky base while we were there. Sadly, my brother wasn't there. It's another one of our healers. I fell in one of our pit traps at the front entrance. This was a dark day. Obviously, you probably know it by now, but this was the day the Seaman Pirates attacked us. Again, they came in there the other day being all, oh, we love trade, oh, we're so peaceful. And actually, I forgot to mention this, but they had come back later asking for help. And I felt really conflicted because the guy genuinely sounded upset. But I was like, I'm really conflicted because I like you and I like Egypt. But I trust Egypt and their judgment, and no matter how much it pains me. So I will let you leave with your life. But if you ever come back, I will kill you. That is what I told him. Little did I know he is basically Gollum. You know, the way he like deceives Frodo. And he's a lying son of a bitch who came back a few sessions later, attacked Egypt, attacked 7 boats, attacked Traveler's Island, I think, or Friendship Island, I think, and was just spawn camping fucking farmers and builders. It was fucked up, and they broke our beds and stole what little resources we had. So this was us meeting up, and they openly bragged. I think I have the article, but I don't want to tab out because it'll end the recording. I have an article where they're openly bragging about what they called a 70v7, but they failed to mention how one that was 70 people over the course of 2 hours and a dozen fights, and also how almost all of these people were taken by surprise, and they weren't fighters. I mean, even though we're wearing nothing right now because we're just killed, we weren't exactly wearing much better. We're just farmers and builders. I got a shirt on. He's got a shield. He's got full armor only because he's a warrior. We're not exactly a warrior culture, but he still felt the need to come in here and kill all of us. So just absolute scum of the earth. Also, this was Dora's house before he got banned. He's supposed to have like a wizard's hat on the top, so that's cute. Less cute is obviously how shitty that guy was. The seaman leader, I mean. Lying right to my face multiple times. And you could be like, oh, he betrayed my trust, or I betrayed his trust. And you could make the argument like that, but the more I played the event, and the more I talked to him, and the more I heard about him, the more I realized he was just a bitch. And even if I had done everything right and done nothing but shower him in love and affection, he still would have betrayed me. So I don't feel a hint of guilt anymore for quote, for betraying him potentially. So he is a bitch. I hate him. He tried to get people banned off the Discord, not because they did anything wrong, but because he wanted to gain an upper hand on the Discord or on the server by decreasing the population of warriors. Oh, and by the way, he didn't even successfully raid Egypt, even though their warriors were gone in Sylvia, solving a conflict there. They couldn't get into the sky base. They kept getting knocked out of there by the local builders and farmers, and so they harassed them with their bows until the army got back and scattered them into the wilderness. So they weren't even very good pirates. We'll figure that becomes more apparent as time goes on. But everyone in the faction was pissed. So this was our early on kill on sight list. I called it the shit list so many times. We changed the name of this kill on sight list to the shit list, and the people on Egypt changed the name of their KOS list to the shit list. So that's funny, at least. I will say though, it was genuinely heartbreaking and angering what they did to my people. It's hard to put it in a positive light, but it was bad. It was frustrating. No matter how many of these events I join, people always feel the need to just kill for no reason. Even if you can make the argument that we had done something to them. They didn't air grievances. They didn't fight and then win, and then they're like, okay, let's negotiate. They didn't do any modicum of negotiation, any modicum of talking, or even showing grievances. They just attacked Egypt, and they were like, hell, while we're at it, we can't attack the farmers in Egypt because they're in their sky base. Let's attack the farmers over here so we can feel better. So just absolute scum of the earth. But it was at least nice. The silver lining, as it were, was that every single one of my teammates made it back home. Even though all their beds were destroyed and they were all sent back to spawn, we all found our way come hell or high water. We walked all the way through that godforsaken desert and we got back home. And that means a lot to me because it means that I was helping build a community that actually mattered to these people. And as a leader, that's very comforting. This was actually a rescue mission that was, or this specific screenshot was a rescue mission organized by the Egyptians, because when their army got back and scattered the pirates, they went to check on us because, God bless them, and they realized there wasn't a single seven-boater in the entire town. So they went into the wilderness and started picking us up and giving us boats, which was nice because the desert is very dangerous. We this is a war party we made later that day. I told people, okay, lock in. We're crafting iron armor. We're crafting iron tools. We're grabbing every scrap we can, and we're gonna hunt these pirates. It was mostly done out of rage, not out of reason, and we didn't really find a lot, but it was still a nice bonding moment, if a bit of a time waster, to make this lovely little war party. We heard a rumor that Friendship Island was in trouble or had been raided, and that the pirates were now stationed there. And so we went out there to investigate it. I don't have a screenshot of it for some reason. There was nothing there but the actual people of Friendship Island, but it was so stressful because we got there, didn't think anyone was there, and then we saw people, so we rushed up there with swords in hand, ready for blood, and it was just villagers. But it was so loud and confusing because people were so stressed out, especially from their POV. We just barged in there without a warrant with swords drawn, full iron armor, as if they hadn't already been harassed by some pirates. And we were like, "Hey, we're looking for people to kill." And so it was a dark day for everyone on that server. But thankfully, we didn't kill anybody that didn't deserve it. We just kind of went home, and I think our visit was partially what influenced Friendship Island to sail north, because they had just been raided and then had a close call with another big group. They're like, "Screw this, man! I'm out of here." Yeah, there it is. It says right there. This is the shit list in Egypt. Uh, this is me and participant 789, who's in charge of the military, I believe, checking on Seaman's old base. While we were there, participant 50 came out of the blue, and turns out he was this sweet little kid that was part of Seaman, but he kind of lost his way after the first war. He had been totally abandoned by his group. He had never much cared for the wars, and they never really cared for his input. I feel like they just kind of abused him for his labor. So we were like, yeah, don't tell anyone you're part of Seaman because they'll kill you, but you can join our faction as a refugee. And even this little kid we watched because we were so distrusting and angry after that first Seaman raid. So, but thankfully he ended up being a good kid, and he did a lot of the farming for us to keep us fed. Although, speaking of, I'm sad I didn't get a screenshot of it, but we had some incidents with thieves, and I actually killed a thief at the foot of our spawn, because I was like, he was asking, like, "Hey, can I have a saddle?" Mind you, he didn't even want to trade for it. He just wanted a saddle. And I was like, "Sure, I'll get you a saddle." And I couldn't find it, and I was like, okay, it is definitely because this kid stole it, because I kept asking him to stop pilfering through chests, and he kept pilfering through chests. And so when I couldn't find the saddle, I was like, he definitely stole it, but I can't prove it. And I said, "Sorry, I don't have a spare one. I'm sorry." And he got angry at me. And so we're gonna go back. Back when this was the front entrance, he tried to spleef me by opening these trap doors as he was leaving to like run away with our stuff. And I said, "All right, that's it." And so I closed the trap doors, ran after him, and axe credited him to death, and got all our stuff back. Shocker of shockers, he had my saddle that I was going to give to him for free. But anyways, we accepted this guy as an immigrant. Random signs, more documentation of the barracks, so we can write. The names were never taken down here, so we wrote down every name that was here and put it on the shit list. This was a visitor from another faction. I'm forgetting the name, but these were cool guys. They would visit every now and again. There's the morgue. I think this is a hunting party, because at the time Dora was telling us that the IRS had been really shitty to him, or which the IRS was another group, obviously. But when we had all been scattered by the Seaman raids, he had fled to the IRS, and he was asking for help, but they were like, "Fuck no," and or at least he claimed that they were even like, "That's one less competitor," and I was so angered by it. I wanted to find IRS and just attack them. but we're pretty bad with directions, so I don't think we ever found them. Yeah, I think this is literally the expedition where all of us died. We got ambushed by mobs a lot, so these two died. Dog actually just disappeared into the horizon, and like 20 minutes later, after I died, I realized he had been sailing back home, and he actually made it, the absolute mad lad. But this was me and the sole survivor of the expedition, still exploring. Actually, I think this time we were exploring for bandits, or for bandit strongholds, and we ended up starving to death in the wilderness. This is just me exploring with my skeleton horse. The skeleton horse died, sadly. To Egypt! Mob grinder that I helped build. This is the road that connects the mob grinder. This was originally dug out by Dora so it could lead to the AON headquarters, but it got repurposed because the AON never came to fruition. This is the tavern that's in Egypt. This is when it was finally completed, and this was the first time I ever met people from Mountain Keep, because Mountain Keep was a merger nation of IRS and what was the other nation? It was IRS and South Beacon. There were some people that stayed in South Beacon, but not many. The vast majority of them all joined Mountain Keep, and this was their first outing as Mountain Keep, and it made it quite confusing because I was beefing with IRS, but now they were part of Mountain Keep, and I still wanted to beef with them, but I also didn't want to beef with a nation twice my size, or more like 3 times my size. This became even more confused when participant 520 showed up because he claimed to be from IRS looking for his stolen horse. He claimed that Dora had stolen it, and I think what he had done was, after he had been insulted, he had stolen the horse, but the guy didn't know that, and he was heartbroken. Or he wasn't that heartbroken, he was upset. And we agreed to help him find his horse because we had at one point owned his horse, but we had lost it while on another failed expedition to look for pirates. So we ended up getting his horse back, which was nice. This is the town and later developments. This is the blacksmith headquarters, hospital, apartments, Dora's house, notice board for like if you needed a job. There's a map because the people in Egypt actually had maps, and that was quite nice. Okay, so we're at the 42-minute mark. I'm going to try to rapid fire through the ones that aren't personally connected to me. Diplomatic trip to Sylvia. They had a border crossing system, which was quite funny. They were very stingy. There's Commandant again. This was a bridge that I had officially given permission to be built to connect me, or our nation, and theirs. I don't know who built it, but they did a damn good job. With the design and all that. And it made me quite happy. Sunrise at Egypt. The tiny little alcove house. I don't know if it was in this recording I talked about it, but the city was so crammed that this house was basically built on accident. Like, the roof above is actually a road, like a walkway. The wall that way, this wall right here is oak, but if you were to take that away, it's stone brick, which is a warehouse. This is the blacksmith headquarters, and then right here is the chimney of the blacksmith headquarters. So the only blocks that were really added to this place to make it a house was the front door, because this was also the city wall. So this ended up becoming the builder's headquarters. Another meeting. This was my doctor building a watchtower, which was terrible for my mental health because the guy kept dying and resetting his healer levels, and we kept crying out like Dallas from Payday 2, like, I need a medic bag! And he kept resetting his levels, and he was like, you know what, I've been taking too many risks. Let me build a watchtower by myself in the dark with phantoms. So he wasn't that bright, but it was a very cool tower at least. This is another visit from Traveler's Island. I believe this is when they were setting up the passport system. This was one of the many countermeasures that were used to identify and kill pirates because they had a habit of infiltrating groups, especially big ones. So it was agreed upon that one person from each faction would write passports for everybody within their respective faction, and they were the only one allowed to do it. And we would use these passports to allow each other into each other's nations. So Trickster was meant to do it because he was going to be our librarian after he died as our level 4 blacksmith, and then he kept dying, and then he just sort of gave up, and we never ended up getting a librarian before the event ended, which was heartbreaking because I think that the passport system was pretty damn cool. But only a couple of people in our group ended up getting passports, but they had to have been made by Sylvians or Egyptians as like special exemptions. So, but he had come here to explain the system to me. This is a screenshot on top of the newly built Knights headquarters. You can see the new city district as well. Fun fact, we put deep slate bricks underneath this grass. You can see where it's been disturbed from where it dug up most of it. And that way mobs couldn't dig up to the surface, but we could actually have grass and it look nice. So, a team screenshot, or a couple of them actually, with almost everybody. I accidentally left this guy out. He was way underground, out of earshot, and so he was unfortunately left out of the team screenshot. He was our chief miner. And while we're at it, I might as well do a brief overview of everybody here. I believe there was 3 pigmen. It was me who's taking the screenshot, the business pigman, and then one other pigman that really didn't log on. This guy was originally in charge of the miners. He did a lot of mining and menial chores. This was our chief healer, Dr. Zombie, or Zombie Doctor as I called him. He did not use VoIP. He was really funny about it. He could use the VoIP, but the only thing he used it for was spamming Minecraft zombie sounds in using his soundboard. And it was really funny to mess with because, you could just pretend that he said something to you. So I'd be like, "Hey, how's your day?" And he would just go, "Gah." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, right?" So it was a lot of fun yeah. This guy, I'm blanking on what he did. He didn't log on as much. He was pretty busy with real life stuff, like a weirdo. This is participant 25. He was one of the warriors. This is 789. He was the chief of the warriors. He was the one who built the warriors headquarters, and he was very active with Egypt and hunting down pirates. He spent as much time at Egypt as he did in 7 Boats near the end of the event. Participant 379 is our chief builder. He did a lot of the best builds in the city. Participant 928 was one of our farmers. He did a really good job with the farms. Him and like a couple other guys. I know participant 50 isn't in this screenshot, but him, 928, and one other guy quietly expanded the farms without me ever asking them to, which I greatly appreciated the initiative, because after a while we just stopped going hungry. We just always had food. And we had this communal chest that we put in the farmer's headquarters, and it was just like, hey, if you're hungry, grab food from the chest and take only as much as you need and leave the rest in there. And it was a great system, and so nobody ever went hungry ever again after that. And it was all thanks to these farmers quietly expanding the sugarcane and food field in the background. I don't remember what he did. He was very active in the Civ, though, when he was online, and he was quite nice. This is Trickster, my second in command. This is participant 65. He was very handy around the base as well. Love him. 195 was another farmer, I believe, although he does end up becoming a blacksmith. And then 412 was also known as Dog, because, he has a dog skin. But near the end of the server, he asked me to call him Argos, which was the dog that Odysseus owned in the Odyssey. And it was actually quite sad, the reason why he did this. I feel like he got tired of being called Dog because it was dehumanizing, and he never told me why he changed the name. But he was like, "Oh, you should call me Argos, like the dog in the Odyssey, because he Odysseus is gone for 20 years, and the only time he comes back is right as the dog's dying, and he spends his whole life waiting." And I was compared to Odysseus because I was on so many diplomatic trips and hunting parties and different outings like that. And even when I was in town, I was always busy, like directing people to help the city grow. So I was just so busy, I kind of left my friend behind, but like not in a rude way, just in like a busy, like a life gets busy kind of left behind. But I was still heartbroken. I was like, damn, that's such a sad comparison. Like that made me really sad at the time because I felt like a really bad friend. But no, Dog was always so kind and patient with me and was very active in the community. And he was one of our warriors, I believe. I don't really know why. I never took him to be a warrior, but he did a good job. So yeah, this is 986. This is one of our big miners. This is a screenshot of just me and Dog because I think this was the day we got married. He threw an egg at me as a joke, and it spawned a chicken, and so it was our son. And if you have a son, you need to get married. So this is our screenshot. We're like, yeah, we should get married. And I fucking missed. I never got around to making that wedding ceremony because my computer cracked. Yeah, that's probably one of my biggest regrets is not actually getting around to that marriage ceremony, but we did have one planned. Beautiful screenshot of late game. This is me being shown the room underneath the Sphinx. You can't see it here, but barely, right there. They had a Sphinx they built. They built a couple pyramids too. They were just showing me around. I don't remember what that was. What is this? I actually don't remember what this trip was. I remember it being quite noisy because there were so many people. I do know this was one of the first times I ever actually met this mountain village up here. I forget who lived up here, but it was one of the earliest times I'd been there. This is an old road we took because I think Commandant had never left his base up until that point. And so we took this old road that was built by me and Dora that connected it to the sea, which connected it directly to Seven Boats. And we're like, yeah, we'll give you a tour. I think he died, but I don't remember. I think he died that day. But that was a really fascinating thing I noticed about the event is people did not get out much. Even people from Seven Boats and Egypt did not visit the other, especially before that bridge was built. And I feel like it's quite funny because, especially for Egypt, we were literally a river across. We were not that far. But I feel like people were just in their comfort zone in their towns, and they didn't feel a need to explore that dangerous wilderness when all their friends and food were, right where they needed. And it's quite accurate to how real life is, which I thought was quite funny. This is the sky base. I cranked up my render distance because everybody was like, yo, check out the sky base they built to, get away from the pirates. And I turned up my render distance and I'm like, that is imposing. Let's see here. Oh, by the way, this is another fella that didn't get into the screenshot. They actually missed the raid, the one where the Seaman Pirates attacked us because they don't log on but so much because again, they actually have good work-life balance. So but they left and they were like, oh yeah, everything's so fun, everything's so bright and dandy. When they came back, everyone was in chaos, everyone was like angry, and the entire skybase was gone. By the way, I totally forgot to mention, but the wooden notice board, that's where the entrance of the skybase used to be. We tore the whole thing down. So when he logged on, he was like, "Where's the skybase?" But that was a while ago. This is the Sphinx. This was a meeting. This is actually a pretty monumental meeting that we had with all the major powers to coordinate our efforts on hunting down the pirates. It was a bit of unofficial alliance. It's like I said earlier, it's more of a collaboration. This is the ladder going up to their sky base. I got a good view of everything. I actually commissioned them to build me a pyramid, but again, because I wasn't on session 14, I couldn't get them to finish it. And I think that's my biggest regret on this event, was not being able to play session 14. My Wi-Fi just absolutely shit its pants, and then I just kind of crescendoed by throwing my mouse at my computer screen and just being unable to use my computer for the rest of the day. But what I wanted to do was do the marriage ceremony, get my pyramid built in Egypt, and then just have a big ass party with everybody in my nation and just celebrate how far we've come from our absolute shit show of a start. But just the Wi-Fi said no. Wi-Fi said fuck you. So I never got to say goodbye. I never got to take the screenshots of the village like I wanted to, because I wanted to do a photo shoot of all the citizens and of the city. And that sucks. But, I'm not going to let it hamper how much fun I had. It was a great event. But also, this is a windmill that was built by 789, I think. And then this was a watchtower built by Zombies, or Zombie Doctor. And he let me use it as the town hall, because it was high enough we could have town hall meetings without people eavesdropping. We ended up never using it. But, oh well. This was that meeting from that earlier clip. This was that hunting expedition. This was a pirate we actually caught on, or that we caught, and we're like, hey, this is a pirate. But I said, wait, no, we can't be certain. So my dumb ass gave him enough time, he rode away. So that's a Friendship Island stronghold. This was Friendship Island's very not island base. Those poor people were so innocent and so kind, but you could tell the world had burned them, and they would not let us in their base. And so I decided to respect it. Supposedly they had quite a few traps in there. I don't really know how true that is, but we ended up waiting here for like 40 minutes and then realizing that we had wasted our time, which sucks, but, I had fun talking to him, so there's that at least. This is a funny screenshot I got of my medic killing himself. Let's see. I hope I survive clutching for my tower. And then I said, me too. And then I saw him jump. I couldn't see him hit the ground. And then I just hear, so I died. So in case you're wondering why we didn't always have heals in our town, that's why. This is the mine shaft again. Another screenshot of the town. So we're going to just go over it real quick. This was going to be the stables. That's the windmill. A lot of our farms. I'm on the town hall, obviously. This was a lava farm. This was a secret watchtower that had my spawn bed in a secret bunker. This was the apartments, the morgue, Dora's house, the medic's office, the blacksmith's headquarters, the military headquarters, which was an absolute beast of a building. And you can even see here this walkway here, like this, the staircase that leads up to here. And then it goes down here to this walkway. That was the roof of the builder's house. And then this was a big wall that was built between Egypt and my nation. Words. I didn't give them permission to build the wall. There it is again on the other side, but I decided, because I still wanted us to be mostly separate, but they were like, hey, the pirates like to attack us by the sea, so we're going to build a wall on the sea. And it ended up working. We caught a pirate like that, and we killed him. So, it was worth it. Colosseum that was built by Egypt. More border crossings from Sylvia. Another screenshot of the base. That's the road leading to the Sky Farm. This is me being stuck in the void. And that is everything.